Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons, unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm joined by Karl McGowan, co-founder of FrontierZero. Now, FrontierZero is shaking up the SaaS security with an AI-powered, agentless zero trust platform that helps companies slash software costs, simplify compliance, and prevent threats before they happen. Welcome, Karl. Great to have you here.
Hi, Lawrence. Yeah, pleased to meet you as well. And looking forward to an interesting conversation with you as well.
Amazing. I've obviously positioned FrontierZero, but I'm sure you could probably do a much better job than I could. Just for the sake of the listeners, could you give us a quick snapshot about FrontierZero, what it is that you guys do and the markets that you operate in?
We've been through quite an interesting journey over the last year or so since we sort of started the company off. And we've ended up becoming a unique proposition in the market. So long story short, what we do now is we are an identity-centric SaaS security solution. By that, what we look at is most threat actors, most cybersecurity attacks actually happen where people target the building, for example. They target the windows and the doors. So most cybersecurity solutions look at protecting that. But now, and you'll see lots of hacks with Aegance, with Marks & Spencer's, where the attackers are actually targeting the employees and the users. So what FrontierZero does differently in the rest of the market is we look at you as a user, Lawrence, and we say, what's Lawrence's normal pattern of life? What does Lawrence do on a day-to-day basis? So we try and understand your SaaS applications, your device, your VPN, where you use it, what locations. We build up that pattern of life so we know what Lawrence looks like. And then when something abnormal happens, we pick that up as well. Because most companies don't look at their SaaS applications. And SaaS has exploded over the last sort of 10 years, and it's become a default. But organizations haven't really kept up, and they expect the SaaS provider to provide security. But SaaS provider just doesn't care what device you use. It's the benefit of it. SaaS provider doesn't care if you're an employee or not. That's your responsibility. They don't care if you use it. They don't care utilization. It's all designed to give you freedom, but that freedom also comes at a cost, and that's what hackers are now using and they're targeting. We had a really interesting feedback from PwC that told us last year that 84% of the hacks, or the account compromise attacks, came from user account compromise attacks.
Wow.
So some interesting stats there.
All humans are creatures of habit. And as you say, creating that pattern of life. You know, everyone arrives at the office, everyone sits down at pretty much the same time every day. Everyone grabs a coffee, runs through the emails, and essentially we're reliving the same day pretty much over and over. So that pattern of life, I suppose, allows you then to spot the abnormalities.
And exactly, I think my favorite, we've been lucky and unlucky, I think is not trying to determine it. But in the last 3 months, do you remember Marks & Spencer's in the UK? They had a massive cyber attack. So from the high level view of there, one of their suppliers, their credentials were leaked to a hacker. That hacker then logged in from a brand new location on a brand new device. We see that. So we know actually in that situation, this user's credentials are a risk. And that's what FrontierZero is doing, about highlighting which of your internal and external users are the highest risk to a business. And then you can take actions on what to do next. It's really about giving, I love the visibility story. It's a single pane of glass, because what happens today, and for Agile, I think with you guys, you can look at everything we did give you in Microsoft, and by itself, it looks good. But if your HubSpot looks different, it looks from a different location, that's when the hackers have come in. So we're looking at you holistically in all your applications, all your patterns of life across every part of your SaaS lifestyle to understand what Lawrence really looks like. So then we can say, actually, his Microsoft login was fine. It logged in from Cape Town, where it's nice and sunny at the moment. But we've got a login from Lagos on his HubSpot. And going, what there? One of those is wrong. And we know he lives in Cape Town. He's using the right device in Cape Town. In Lagos, he's using a brand new device. We're picking up those patterns of life, and our AIs are constantly looking at that and trying to understand where the highest risks are. Because long story short, everyone's data is out there. And that's the biggest thing we're trying to highlight to our customers is that no matter how good you are, your credentials are somewhere on the dark web.
I've spent some time in the cybersecurity world, selling various cybersecurity products in the past. We always used to say that it's just a matter of when, really, referring to, when will you get hit by an attack? Because as you rightly say, everyone's data is out there somewhere. Karl, if we just take a step back and have a look at FrontierZero, I mean, as a co-founder, how do you personally define the vision for the company, and how has your role shaped that as the company's grown?
So there's two of us as the co-founders, a co-founder would suggest. So the best way to tell this story is actually the beginning of what happened. So my partner in crime, Mo, he was a cybersecurity lead at a leading company here in the UAE. And he left the company. And a year after he left, he still had access to some of his core systems. They turned off his email and his the things that IT knew about. But in his line of business, they had certain tools they used. And IT didn't get involved in those are the tools. And you've got, it happens today, you've got the marketing guys will go off and say, you know what, we've got a credit card, we're going to get Canva licenses because we want to use Canva. The finance team will go, we want to use Expensify for expenses. So now lines of business are buying business tools, using business tools, and IT have no visibility. There's a study in 2024 where they looked at and they realized that IT only have visibility over 44% of the business apps these days. So it's gone from when I was back in a long time ago in IT, we managed everything. There was no software in the business which IT didn't control. But now it's all been diversified to the bit lines of the business, but the IT are still responsible. The cybersecurity team are still responsible for that visibility. So if there's a breach in the application, and you've got recently Salesforce has been breached, IT are responsible to protect the business, but have no visibility. So our job is to give a single pane of glass and say, look, this is where we can see everything for your SaaS applications.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
sense.
That was the original, that's the original vision. So the original vision was around helping organizations have visibility over their SaaS applications. We don't do everything. We just look at the SaaS side of things because honestly, there's a massive problem in that space.
And in terms of milestones along the way, things like partnerships, awards, or certifications, have there been any that best captures that vision in action?
Well, this year we were caught off guard. We were quite excited, but we got awarded the UAE the cyber startup of the year, which is quite exciting from the UAE Cybersecurity board. But we've also got some really exciting partnerships coming up. The ones I can officially announce is there's a company called CPX here in the UAE. We are in very good talks with a company called ServiceNow, which many of your partners will know about. And we've got Alibaba, who will be at GITEX with this year. And there's two other big partnerships, which I'm hoping to get signed off in the next 2 or 3 months. But what's happening with us, because the problem we solve is being now understood. We went last year through an education phase and everything was educating. And over the last 3 or 4 months, with all of the attacks, especially the third-party attacks, we haven't had to educate because people go, now I understand the problem. Well, they didn't think about the dark web data being leaked and then that data being used to access their SaaS applications and their SaaS applications and hackers going through and finding ways in to do ransomware attacks, to do account takeovers, to do account breaches. And now organizations are realizing it's not just big organizations, lots of small organizations too. So our job is to help people say, look, we can give you visibility over the biggest risks in your organization through identity focus.
You've built this AI-powered agentless zero trust solution. What strategic innovations or decisions help FrontierZero stand apart in such a crowded cybersecurity market?
I think the biggest one is the identity focus, and that's what we've picked up because I'm going to sound bad, but we stumbled into identity. And we were following the rest of the herd and looking at the applications and trying to give you application visibility. But what we started to realize is that we had all the applications, we had the users, and then we could add in context. We could add in more valuable data around those. Because if you look at attack surface management tools, which they go on the dark web and they'll dump from the dark web, here are all of the leaked credentials about all of your employees, about everything in your company, and they'll share that with the IT director or the head of IT or the head of cybersecurity. And then they've got to go through that data and say, okay, is it relevant? But the first thing we do is, well, wait there. Lawrence still works for the company, so we look at his data. But there may be another guy called Joe Bloggs. He left, so his data breach makes no sense. We don't need to look at that data set. We then look at, so did Lawrence change his password since the breach? Well, Lawrence changed his password since the breach, so now that dark web data set is no longer relevant on him. And we start looking at all those different things. So we make the data set more relevant because we're an identity focused. So we look at an individual, and if I'm honest, that's what hackers do. The hackers don't look at the organization. They say, we're going to spam the whole of the organization. Which individual is the easiest one to get into or impersonate?
In terms of those innovations or decisions, quite interested to hear from you. Were there any early pivots or assumptions that you made that didn't quite pan out?
Mo doesn't like this story, but it has actually been a quite interesting journey for us. So FrontierZero's original architecture is built around zero trust, and that's the original architecture proposition we focused on. The problem we found with zero trust is that the market maturity in it, where we were at, was difficult to sell that concept. But we did understand, we knew who was accessing what, when, and where from a SaaS perspective. So we understood who was accessing that data. And then we said, okay, then how can we use the data? And our first customer, we actually ended up saving them nearly 40% on their software license costs, because we identified one of the applications they were using, they'd given it to the whole company, but only 10% of the company were using it. So we said, okay, then let's go and speak to the CFO and see if the CFO will buy this product because it looks really cool. And the CFOs were coming back to us and saying, Karl, it's lovely. We've got an IT budget this big. I've got a SaaS budget this big, and you're saving me 10%. So you're interesting, but you're not critical to my business. We learned from that one. Our next learning curve, once we took that one, we then looked at compliance data, because one of our third customer, I think it was, used our product to help them with their ISO compliance. So we built a compliance reporting tool. And then went to the compliance team, said the compliance teams, hey, we've got this SaaS compliance reporting tool, which will show you save money in your ISO compliance and everything else. And they said, this is great. We have this much compliance requirements. This is my SaaS requirements. You're saving me this much time. Again, so you're interesting, but not critical of my business. Okay. Next pivot. Next one was the dark web data. That was a really interesting one. So when we picked up the dark web data, and we found loads of dark web data about, because Mo is a hacker, ethical hacker, sorry. Mo was an ethical hacker, so was able to get this dark web data for us. And we said to companies, do you want to look at your dark web data? And the amount of companies who were concerned about their dark web data, but didn't want to see it, was interesting. So that one, we found that one was a dead end as well. So we moved on to the next one. But what we started to realize is that all of this information had one thing in common, and it was the user. And then when we started to look at the user and look at how we highlight the user risk, that's when we look at the value. So the journey meant we kept trying different pivots, and roughly it was every 3 or 4 months we'd pivot. We kept pitching and pivoting, but it was listening to the customer and trying to get their attention. So we've always had the same always had the same ideal customer profile. We've always known who we're targeting, but we've always then tried to pivot and say, okay, then why are they going to buy now? And my biggest thing, and I come from a sales background, is why now? And I need a reason to help someone say, what action can we take to influence your decision to buy now? Because having interest in my product's great, but I need you to want to buy the product and want to take an action and make a decision. So it was the why now. And we've got to the why now, and the why now is very simple, is hackers are attacking your users internally, externally. You rarely have visibility, and I'd say 95% of companies have visibility over who has access to their SaaS environment and what they're doing with it. And that's what our value add is. So the why now is you're being targeted now. And we know that with AI, more and more companies are being targeted because it's easier and easier and easier to pull the dark web data and say, cool, I've got Lawrence's email address from this data breach when he logged on to this dodgy website. I've got the password you use on that dodgy website, and 84% of people, 86% of people reuse the same password, according to Google. So I've got his email and his password. I know he's using these 5 applications. Let's keep trying each of these applications. And now they say which one of them's weak. Bang, they're on the weak one, and in they go.
Yeah, and then they're in. I mean, it sounds like many are pivots in your past, but that is the nature of company and especially sort of startups. As long as you're sort of learning on your journey, which it sounds like you have. Sticking with the narrative of innovation, what's the next frontier for you guys? Are there sort of new modules coming out, new verticals, or are you looking at branching into new regions, new geographies?
We've got some exciting partnerships which we're discussing in Australia. We've got a partnership which I'll hopefully be announcing next 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully, or at GITEX, with a very large mining group, which will be exciting for us because one of the problems they've got, same as everyone else has, is that they've got these companies building mines. They've got all these different contractors coming into the business on a regular basis, and they're all contractors, and they have no visibility over has this contractor left the business or not. And there are some major corporations who are going, actually, we need to know this one contractor, has he left? Is he still working for you? Has his credentials been utilized somewhere else? And they have not that visibility. So we've got some big partnerships going in there. So at the moment, our main markets will be UK, the UAE, Australia. We have some extra exciting discussions happening also in your neck of the woods where the Springboks are all living. So we're also looking to go into that market. So we've got some good expansion models, but the market we're growing in the markets, but also there's going to be some interesting new updates on the AI area. So Mo and the team are doing some really exciting LLM discussions and trying to pull out some interesting information around our data sets to help customers react even quicker to these hacker attacks.
Yeah, excellent. I think those growth aspirations is what we all strive for. But that also means that scaling globally obviously means you're competing pretty hard for talent. How are you approaching recruitment and retention at FrontierZero as you expand?
Great question. I think that's one of my biggest issues. Issues is the wrong word. Opportunities. One of my biggest opportunities. Finding the right people, because one of the things Mo and I are really clear on, we've got an exciting vision for the business. We aren't looking at hiring people who want at the moment, who want a job. We want someone who wants to come along the journey with us. So our customers and our employees are all people who should be coming along with the journey. So what part of the interviewing is understanding what's your driver, what motivates you, what excites you. Because I won't give you my interview questions. I've got an interview question which Mo loves and hates at the same time, but it's a way of helping me think about how the person we're interviewing thinks. And it's more important for us to know how you think than what you do, because I coach rugby. It's one of my passions. And I say I can coach rugby skills, but I can't coach attitude. If you've got the right attitude, we can work with you, and that's what we're looking for in FrontierZero. It's having the right attitude, having that vision and visibility and that understanding to want to get somewhere and achieve something, and that's what we're looking for, is those people. So in terms of our hiring process, it is all about trying to understand the person and get the right attitude of people in there. The retention, and hopefully, and I think I've always thought in my career, the most important role of a manager is to hire. It's really, we spend much more time on getting the right people in than sometimes we should, but it's all about saying, okay, then we need the right people in, because it's someone who come on the journey with us. Over the next 3 years, it's going to be an exciting up and down journey, and someone's going to be on that journey with us.
And in your experience, Karl, what would you say, what roles or skills are the toughest to hire for?
In this cybersecurity world, I think it's the cybersecurity professionals. It's trying to get the ones who are a little bit more rounded. I think not rounded, but flexible, because a lot of them are really good at what they do and they're really clear in what they do. Whereas in our current world, we've pivoted multiple times. Those pivots are important. Being able to adapt to changes is something there. So it's the biggest skill I think we're looking for is someone who has the understanding, but also can adapt with us on the journey. The adaptation is the hardest part because I honestly, over the next 3 years, we have a vision of where the product's going, and depending on what happens in the global markets, that might change. I need someone who's there who can say, actually, yes, we understand that we pivoted. Let's work on the pivot and move forwards.
Something that I'm fascinated with is company culture. If you visit my socials, LinkedIn in particular, I talk about it quite a lot because I feel like post COVID, the idea of company culture is a little bit lost, given the sort of work from home phenomenon. I know that a lot of companies are driving to get people back into office, but a real challenge with a company like FrontierZero, as you are expanding globally and your footprint is reaching different time zones, how do you manage keeping your company culture intact whilst driving that growth?
It comes from me and Mo, and I think that's the biggest thing. And it's more about our attitude towards a team and our attitude to what getting people to say, look, and I think you and I both have rugby heads. I think I love about rugby union. You have multiple different players with different skill sets, and you can have the best players in the world, but unless you play as a team, it doesn't work. So you've all got to say, well, this is my job. I'll do my job, but I'm part of a wider team. So my job, I always believe, is to sort of set the vision and direction, but it's not my job to take the actions. And it's really giving the guys the freedom to say, look, these are the areas we need to achieve in. This is the guardrails. Get the end goal here, and it's measuring those end goals. So it's really communication. I'm massively on over communicating, catching up, having a chat. I try and make sure I'm always available for the team for random conversations. We have maybe too many communication channels for us all, but being able to communicate, I think, is one of the biggest things, and being open to just being guided together as part of a team.
Yeah, I love that. But behind the scenes, Karl, at FrontierZero, what are some of the systems or processes that you put in place that our viewers and listeners might learn from, especially when it comes to scaling a cybersecurity startup quickly?
Personally, and I think for my personally, it's constantly learning, and that's my biggest thing is that with the team, like I try and exercise every day, and while I'm exercising, I'm always listening to podcasts, to YouTube videos to try and get more insights and get my thoughts in. So I'm a big believer in learning, but I share lots of my learnings with the team and say, look, this is interesting. Let's try and how can we adapt these things? In terms of the core processes, from a sales perspective, it's doing the boring things, well, and it's documenting down, understanding the key scripts, understanding the key factors, having measurables which we can track, and it's really okay. What are our key KPIs? And every week, Mo and I meet on a Sunday to discuss next week's KPIs. We try and track our KPIs and review it on a Friday. Having that accountability for each other is important for us. I think those things are key, just making sure that you have, okay, these are our KPIs for sales, these are the KPIs for engineering, here's the KPIs for internal operations, and we just try and track those KPIs. They do change over time, but at least we've got something to track to say, are we making small movements in the right direction? Because we may not always make the sales we want to make every month, but we know actually, have we increased the number of meetings we've had this month? And small things like that, we try and track.
Has there been an operational process that's really changed the game for you?
If I'm honest, for me personally, it's been our Sunday meetings. It's not really a process. It's Mo and I saying, okay, then we'll meet on a Sunday to make sure that we spend 2 hours on a Sunday together to make sure that the rest of our week's planned and we know what we've got to achieve. So then we can have everyone, the whole team, having understanding before they hit the ground running. So Monday morning, everyone knows where we're going to be on Friday, so we can say, actually, do we get there? And on Wednesday, there's a touch point and say, okay, then what blockers are we having to hit our KPIs? Mo has a great line which he looks at noise versus signals, and he tries and says, okay, then we need to track more of the signals. And so there's a lot of data, a lot of things happening, but on the Sunday meetings, it's more okay, then what are the signals we're going to track for the week, and have we got there on Friday as well?
And so you've mentioned KPIs that you track signals, as you've just mentioned. What are those metrics that you're looking at on your internal dashboards that tell you we're on track, or conversely, we're going off track here, we need to make a couple of changes?
It's interesting. We actually changed it because we were tracking revenue as one of our key metrics, and I actually moved it off revenue, mainly because we did quite a few pivots. But I then started saying, okay, then it's more about outbound activity from a sales perspective, outbound activity, number of calls, number of meetings, things which we can control, because we can control how many calls we make, we can control how many meetings we have, how many POCs, and it's really about getting those, and it's trying to optimize those ones from a sales perspective, from an engineering perspective. It's more about Mo and the team highlighting, okay, then we're going to deliver XYZ features and identify kind of how we deliver the features on time. And it's just trying to keep the accountability. So Mo and I hold each other accountable and saying in each of our areas, I define my KPIs, he defines his KPIs, and how we hit them. And we just try and keep those ones on there. So from a sales perspective, it's really heavily on move now onto activity because I can control activity.
So you obviously have these goals to expand your footprint further and to reach into new markets. How are you sourcing new clients today, and what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing in that journey?
So this came back to our ICP, so our ideal customer profile. So once we sort of were clear on our ideal customer profile, and this is part of the journey we went on, we sat with the ideal some of the contacts we had, and the question I asked them quite clearly is, okay, then if we didn't personally know you, how do we get a meeting with you? And the answer was always, you don't. Because we're aiming at the CISOs. So CISOs have come this from 500 to 10,000 employees, and they were very clear, you wouldn't speak to us because we get bombarded with multiple different organizations trying to get our attention. I said, but if you want our attention, our partners who already have my attention, I'll listen to them because they're going to be my filter and say, this is relevant to you. So then the strategy we've got now is, because we're focused on CISOs, is a partner-led strategy. So everything is led through partners. So my job at the moment is to identify partners who talk to our ICP, our ideal customer profile, and then go from those guys. So that's our go-to-market, is working with the partner strategy. So
You raise a very good point about CISOs, for example, or your ideal customers probably receiving a whole bunch of emails from multiple companies trying to sell them things, and to sort of sift out the noise and find the right solution must be quite a challenge. So I like the pivot that you've made, and trying to enter in through a door that's already ajar through that partnership. Do you find, Karl, that you're needing to adapt your approach when talking to clients across different industries, banking versus healthcare versus government, for example?
Not with the CISOs, but what's interesting is, so one of the other areas, one of the ways we get attention from the organization, we will talk to different parts of the business, because what we have, and I think you've nailed at the beginning of it, we do have a compliance module. So I can open a door through the compliance team. I can open the door through the finance team. So we go direct to customers as well as actually going indirect via the partners. And if there's a target company, we'll look at them and say, okay, then how can I get the attention of this member of the business to get in? Like, one of my most recent opportunities came up through the procurement team. So we highlight to a procurement team in Saudi Arabia how we could help them reduce their costs. And they said, this is interesting. We pitched to them, and then moved into they moved over to the IT guy, which was fine from our side. But the messaging and the story changes depending on which part of the world we're in. So when I'm talking to the guys in Saudi versus when I'm talking to the UK markets, there's a very different timeline and messaging on the opportunity and how the actual process works. So we're finding it interesting in terms of the propositions. But again, if I go back to my current strategy, I have a very strong partner in the UK who's driving the business for us there. They're established. We work with those guys to open the doors and go through. And we've got similar things in Saudi and Australia as well. There is one thing actually you did. Sorry.
Pardon me, go ahead.
As you said, there's one thing which we're trying, which is interesting for us. Each vertical market, so each not okay, each geographical market has been interesting. So if I look at the UK, with our UK partner, there's a thing called Cyber Essentials, which is a UK government regulatory requirement. So we built a Cyber Essentials module so they can do reporting in minutes there. In Australia, they've got Essential 8. In Saudi Arabia, they've got one called the NCA compliance. So different markets have got these different regulations. So we're doing some nuance on the regulations for each market as well to help open the door so we can help show the whole product.
Yeah, makes sense. Something that I wanted to share was that when I was selling cybersecurity products in a previous life, we would always rely on what we call the rule of three. So you'd obviously have your CISO at the top, that would be your key decision maker. But then we would try to find three additional contacts within the company, and that's either vertically or laterally, and try and open doors with them, ultimately to try get a chance to sit down in front of the CISO and those decision makers. So when you are getting the chance to sit down in front of your ICP, where are you finding the resistance? Is it integration complexity? Is it trust, or is it budget prioritization?
They're overwhelmed, if I'm honest. All CISOs we speak to are overwhelmed. There's so much happening because everyone's targeted, where they've got the attacks from the hackers, from the threat actors, and they've also got the budget constraints and the business trying to say we want to do more business. So there's a great question: is okay then? Do they stop everyone having access, or do they do they risk being attacked? And they're trying to find the balance. I think the biggest pushback we've having at the moment, one's time. They're overwhelmed with requirements, and two, because of who we're targeting, we're a smaller company, we're a startup, so there's a slight fear from the procurement from the CISOs around the size of our company, and that's something we're working with, and we're trying to work on those things. But I think, and I'm really clear with all of our customers, is it's more about we're looking for people to join us for the journey. So I don't want a customer to buy the finished product. I want the customer to buy the solution we're solving and join us on that journey, so we can then work together on the journey and say, look, we want to make the product better and better and better and better together.
So really offering a strategic outlook on what the future looks like for them.
Yeah.
Where, Karl, would you say FrontierZero is firing on all cylinders, and where do you still see friction, whether that's internally or with clients?
Our engineering, so Mo and the engineering team are phenomenal. The product we've built is so exciting. The next version coming out more likely in Q1 blew my mind when I saw it last week, and what the guys have sort of given me the concept and the vision of where we're going to. So I'm excited by that one. So from a product perspective, it's really firing really, really well. I think it's the awareness. We spent 9 months last year in the education mode because most companies didn't care. They didn't care who accessed their SaaS because they didn't see it as a problem. They didn't care if their data was on the dark web. It wasn't a problem. It was a lack of care from the customers was the biggest problem. That's changed a lot over the last 3 months, especially with the high-profile hacks. But also, there's very few solutions in the market which solve the problem around that, and we're one of the few solutions which solve that.
Internally, what is keeping you up at night? What are some of the biggest bottlenecks right now for FrontierZero, and how are you trying to navigate those challenges?
More customers. That's it. So growth is definitely something which we're navigating and trying to find new ways to excite and engage customers. It's really the speed of growth, and that is one of my biggest worries, is because we've got a lot of opportunities moving at the moment, a lot of deals coming through, which need to really get closed off. But the deals, what we thought last year we were going to target would be companies from 50 to 150 users. It actually turns out it's 500 to 10,000, up to like one of our opportunities with 20,000 employees. So we've got a very different customer base who's much more mature and has a very different requirement, and that sort of thing is driving us a lot sort of from there. So I think the biggest two things are, yeah, making sure that we keep the customers we have at the moment happy, and finding new customers. I think from my side, those are the two biggest worries for me.
Karl, if we look ahead for FrontierZero, what do the next 12 to 18 months look like for you? What are some of the goals and aspirations that you're driving towards?
Partner networks, so our partners are more opportunities for themselves. We do a lot of support for our partners at the moment, trying to help them understand the problem statement and the vertical, and doing a lot of hand holding. But again, this has only been going for the last 3 months, so we're now seeing the fruits of our labor, where partners are bringing deals to us and partners are actually becoming more self-sufficient. So one of my biggest goals is to have our partners selling FrontierZero without FrontierZero being involved in that sales process. And then it's some of the bigger integrations. I'm very, very excited about the ServiceNow integration, and I think what we've got there with these guys will be huge for us as a business, and it's something which we're sort of preparing for on a large scale. So I think those two things, and then I wish I could tell you, because I think we're roughly 2 weeks too early to tell you about these two new partnerships. One of them, for me personally, inshallah, as we say here in the Middle East, will skyrocket my business. So I'm very excited about that new partnership coming up.
Amazing. Well, we'll keep that under wraps for now. I'm quite interested to know, though, Karl, are there any SaaS or security trends that you're tracking that you feel like could have a big impact in the future?
100%. I think the biggest security trend we're seeing is third-party risk. If I ask, I'd say 90% of the companies we speak to, and then we're, how do you track your third-party access and risk? The answer is Excel. They send a report to their supplier and say, fill out this Excel spreadsheet, and they'll say if you can have access to our environment. Cool. In that point in time, they may have been safe. It's crazy. It's not the case. So for us, that's one of the third party area is just massive growth in my view as well. I think another area which I think is interesting and organizations haven't really understood, and one of our investors actually highlighted this to me. Most companies haven't realized, if you have cyber insurance and one of your employees didn't have MFA and they got hacked, your cyber insurance is invalid. And my investors advised me, do you realize that, Karl? That issue of MFA is no longer a tech issue. It's now a board issue. So we're now working on board solutions to highlight the boards. Your business is exposed from one single user. There is the company in the US, so the city in the US, who had their insurance claim invalidated because of one single user.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, that shift from implementation or from a CISO's perspective to making it a board issue is certainly a real challenge that I had experienced when I was in the cybersecurity world. So wish you all the best with that. But it does sound like the boards are starting to come around to the idea that cybersecurity is such a requirement. Karl, I've really appreciated your time and this conversation. It's been super insightful. Thank you for giving us some views into FrontierZero. It sounds like there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon for you. I wish you all the best. If our listeners and our viewers want to find you guys, where can they find you?
Best place is www.frontierzero, all one word, .io. I appreciated your conversation, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys in the future and different conversations too.
Yes, thanks so much for your time, Karl. Really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, Lawrence.